Okay, let's unpack this. We are diving deep today into a fictional universe that is, I mean, it's staggeringly massive. It's incredibly sprawling. And it's so deeply embedded in the history of American television that it somehow includes gritty crime dramas, surreal sitcoms, alien conspiracies, and yes, even puppets.
And it all hangs on two things that seem completely unconnected. A single, very cynical detective and a snow globe.
Right.
It sounds like, a fantastic premise for a creative writing course. But it is, in fact, one of the most enduring, complex, and just mind-bending fan theories ever conceived.
Yeah.
So today we are exploring the ultimate fictional crossover theory, the Tommy Westphall Hypothesis, and how it suggests that nearly everything you've ever loved, watched, or obsessed over on television is just a constructed reality existing inside the mind of one very specific, highly imaginative child.
And the central figure, the man who provides the actual, structural integrity for this whole fictional reality is Detective John Munch.
Belzer.
Played by the late, inimitable Richard Belzer.
Yeah.
I mean, think about his career for a second, because this is really why the theory works. Munch is the sarcastic, conspiracy theorist detective who managed to be a regular or guest star on 10 different live-action television series. 10 shows. Yeah. Across 5 different networks, over 23 seasons. It starts way back in 1993. That kind of career, that sheer breadth of just popping up everywhere it's just unmatched. And it's the key to this whole rabbit hole.
That breadth, exactly. That ability to move between genres and networks, seamlessly. That is the central pillar of the Westphall theory. So our mission today is to trace those invisible threads of shared fiction and figure out how one cynical Baltimore cop accidentally proved that his whole world was a lie. We'll start with the astonishing, highly unconventional finale of the 1980s medical drama St. Elsewhere.
Okay.
Then we'll trace Munch's career from Baltimore Homicide all the way to New York SVU and beyond. And then we'll lay out the mechanics of exactly how his unprecedented crossovers create this accidental unified reality that may, according to the hypothesis, only exist inside the mind of a young boy with an autism spectrum diagnosis.
It's the ultimate payoff for anyone who just loves tracing continuity and finding all those hidden links in pop culture. We're going to show you how a detective who dedicated his entire life to exposing conspiracies unknowingly proved that his reality was the ultimate conspiracy.
To really understand the scope, we have to start at the absolute genesis of the idea. We have to go back to 1988 with the show that provided the original frame, St. Elsewhere.
Right, let's go back to the origin story, the snow globe revelation. This is critical for understanding the premise, because without the finale of St. Elsewhere, none of this happens.
Right. So in May 1988, the medical drama St. Elsewhere finished its 6th-season run on NBC with a finale called The Last One. Now, this show was deeply respected. It was critically acclaimed. It won 13 Emmy Awards during its run. But it was also known for being a bit unconventional in its storytelling. And, it was willing to get existential.
And they wanted a final ending, right?
Yeah.
I remember reading the producers were adamant. No reunion specials, no soft reboots down the line.
They wanted to end the story with a definitive, and as it turns out, very shocking philosophical statement.
And they definitely succeeded.
Oh, yeah. So the drama focused on the fictional St. Eligius Hospital in Boston, often called St. Elsewhere because it wasn't, a top-tier place. The final 2 scenes of the whole series feature Dr. Donald Westphall, played by Ed Flanders, he was a central figure, and his young son, Tommy Westphall, played by Chad Allen. Now, Tommy is autistic and is often shown as being very quiet, sort of existing in his own internal world.
Okay, so up until the final few minutes, the episode is just normal. A regular episode.
Totally normal. It's dealing with the death of a mentor, the hospital's closing, it's all very melancholic. Then, in the penultimate scene, Dr. Westphall is in Dr. Auschlander's office. He's deep in thought, and you hear this opera aria playing very subtly in the background.
Okay.
Tommy Westphall, the son, enters the room, he looks at the window, and now it's snowing.
And that's the turn.
That is the moment of the break.
Yeah.
The entire scene shifts drastically. The sound changes, the visual tone changes, and we cut away to a completely different setting. It's a generic, dimly lit living room.
Right.
And Donald Westphall walks in, but he's different. He's not wearing scrubs or a doctor's coat. He's wearing a hard hat and a work jacket. The implication is he's a construction worker.
So not a doctor.
Not a doctor. And the man we spent 6 seasons knowing as Dr. Auslander, played by Norman Lloyd, he's sitting there, and he's revealed to be Tommy's grandfather.
Whoa.
And the dialogue that follows just completely recontextualizes the previous 6 years of television. The father asks the grandfather, "How was your day up on the building?" The grandfather replies that Tommy has just been sitting there all day in his own world, staring at that toy. And then the father delivers the line that encapsulates the entire existential crisis of the series. He says, "I don't understand this autism thing, Pop. Here's my son. I talk to him. I don't even know if he can hear me." He sits there all day long in his own world, staring at that toy.
The word toy is key.
Absolutely. As they leave the room, the father places that toy, the snow globe, on top of an old TV set. And the camera slowly, agonizingly, zooms in until the glass sphere fills the frame.
And what's inside?
A perfectly detailed, tiny replica of St. Eligius Hospital, the setting for the entire 6-season series.
Wow, so the whole thing.
The whole thing. The revelation is immediate and profound. The entire St. Elsewhere storyline, all the tears, the medical breakthroughs, all the deaths, all these deeply complex characters was, according to the dominant interpretation, a product of Tommy Westphall's elaborate imagination while he just played with his snow globe.
It was all a dream.
A very complex construction by a child processing the world around him.
And this ending was, you can imagine, a lightning rod.
Oh, completely. Tom Fontana, one of the show's producers, he recalled that the viewer mail was split right down the middle. Half hailed it as this extraordinary and existential piece of art.
And the other half?
The other half expressed such intense rage that they wanted to burn the studio lot. It was deeply polarizing because, it invalidated 6 years of character development in a single zoom shot.
But this is where it makes the leap, right? From just one weird show finale to this massive universal fan theory.
Exactly. The hypothesis didn't spring up immediately in 1988. It gained serious traction in the early 2000s when fans and, crucially, writers, most notably Dwayne McDuffie in 2002, applied this brutal, literal logic to that snow globe reveal.
And the logic is simple, but it's devastating. If the world of St. Elsewhere is fictional within a fictional dream,
then any shrink crossed over with it must also be imaginary, thus existing inside Tommy's mind. The fiction becomes contagious. And the initial explicit link that helped ignite the whole theory was a straightforward character crossover. Dr. Roxanne Turner and Dr. Victor Ehrlich, 2 characters who had been central to the drama at St. Religious. They later appeared as guest stars on the incredibly gritty Baltimore police drama, Homicide, Life on the Street.
That's the link. That one crossover event, which was probably just an inside joke or a nod between producers, suddenly pulls the entire Homicide universe, a universe built on hyperrealism and dark naturalism.
It pulls it right into the fantastical imagined world inside Tommy's snow globe. It's the ultimate undoing of gritty reality.
And that, for our deep dive, is the opening of the floodgates. Because while St. Elsewhere itself only crossed over with a few shows, Homicide housed the one character who would carry that fictional contagion across networks, genres, and decades.
Detective John Munch.
That character, as we know, is Detective John Munch. He is functionally the entire structural engine of this hypothesis. Without his unparalleled ability to cross networks, the Westphall theory would just be a historical footnote confined to 80s and 90s dramas.
But with him, it becomes global. He is the central figure, the one character who connects the Westphall hypothesis to the broadest possible universe.
Yeah.
And Munch, played by Richard Belzer, was a regular character on American television for 22 seasons, starting in '93. His final appearance marked his 23rd season on TV in any capacity.
23 seasons.
His sheer durability and ability to adapt to different genres are what make him the perfect fictional anchor.
And his career progression is just a tour de force through the history of American TV crime drama. So let's start with the Baltimore years, right? The foundation of his cynical worldview.
Homicide. Life on the Street. It ran from 1993 to 1999. Munch started here as the cynical, sharp-witted detective in the Baltimore Police Department Homicide Unit. He's characterized by his relentless use of sarcasm as, a defense mechanism.
And he was based on a real person, right? From David Simon's book.
Exactly. Based on Jay Landsman, a figure from David Simon's 1991 true crime book, Homicide, A Year on the Killing Streets. And this is key. Munch was born from a desire for hyperrealism, only to become the most fantastical character in TV continuity.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
So his defining partnership in Baltimore was with Detective Stanley Bolander. They had this deep but often combative friendship born out of, long hours and shared existential dread.
Right, and he was already an entrepreneur. He co-owned the waterfront, a bar near the precinct, a fact that would become a central piece of continuity for decades.
But the core trait is the paranoia.
Oh, absolutely. Munch was the ultimate skeptic, a staunch believer in deep state and government conspiracy theories. He distrusted all forms of authority, all government, famously stating he can smell a conspiracy at a 5-year-old's lemonade stand.
Mm-hmm.
His entire identity was built on seeing through the lies.
And he had a pretty complex personal history that fueled all that cynicism. I mean, an abusive bipolar father who died by suicide, which really provided the emotional undercurrent for his deep-seated compassion, especially for child victims, despite his abrasive exterior.
Yeah, and he was this pseudo-intellectual Renaissance man, fluent in multiple languages. French was his strongest, and he really represented that counterculture figure who slowly, very reluctantly, became part of the very establishment he'd protested back in the 60s.
So after Homicide gets canceled in 1999, he makes the move that changes continuity forever.
Yep. Munch retired from the BPD, took his Maryland state pension, and moved to New York City to join Dick Wolf's burgeoning universe on Law & Order, Special Victims Unit.
And this move was massive. He took his entire backstory, his entire cynical worldview, and just transplanted it into a new city and a new type of crime investigation. His time on SVU is what defined his second act, right? It's what cemented his fame.
It absolutely did. And in New York, he found his most famous professional dynamic, forming a strong, long-lasting bond with Detective Odafin Fintutuola, played by Ice-T.
A classic pairing.
A classic polarity of opposites. The verbose, intellectual, conspiracy-obsessed Munch paired with the cool, street-smart, pragmatic Finn. Their camaraderie, built on professional respect and just constant verbal sparring, was a masterclass in durable television partnership.
And they maintained his continuity beautifully. Remember, he once accidentally answered the precinct phone with the word homicide. Just a perfect, poignant throwback to his Baltimore days.
Mm-hmm. And he eventually became sergeant after winning a bar bet, and he served temporarily as the SVU commanding officer on occasion.
Only to famously comment, "This job sucks."
Yeah, and happily passed the reins back to Captain Cragen. Munch never wanted power, he just wanted to observe the absurdity of it.
Right. Officially retired from SVU in season 15, got a farewell party with his colleagues, and even some ex-wives from Baltimore showed up. But even retirement wasn't the end.
Nope. He transitioned into a new role as a special investigator for the district attorney's office, occasionally assisting the squad. He was just too essential to disappear completely.
He became this ghost in the machine of law enforcement, Always skeptical, always lurking. His durability is the secret sauce. That personality, the paranoid but compassionate intellect, made him the perfect, recognizable foil that writers could just deploy in any situation across any genre.
And that's why he was the ideal character to carry the Westphall infection.
Yeah.
It's the irony that's so delicious. The man who spent his life trying to expose the lies of the system is the one who, through his sheer presence, validates the ultimate lie, that his reality is merely a child's dream.
Okay, so we've established who Munch is. A paranoid, multilingual Renaissance man whose sole purpose in life is to expose the truth. But his personality, fascinating as it is almost secondary to his superpower, which is his ability to appear everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So let's look at how this one complex character became the central switchboard for the entire TV universe. This is where that 441 show count really begins.
Right. Munch's unifying achievement is that unprecedented run of physically appearing on 10 different series across 5 major networks: NBC, Fox, UPN, HBO, ABC.
All of them.
All of them. We need to examine these 10 core appearances because they are the structural supports of the whole Westphall Hypothesis.
So let's start with the biggest, most obvious foundation. The Dick Wolf universe on NBC. That provided the immediate pathway after Homicide, right?
Absolutely. Munch's entry into the broader Law & Order universe was gradual. While he was still a Baltimore detective, he appeared in 4 separate crossover episodes with the original Law & Order series between 96 and 2000.
Okay.
And these were essential not just for entertainment, but as, logistical groundwork. They showed that the BPD and NYPD worked closely together, establishing a shared reality that eventually allowed for Munch's formal transfer to SVU.
And once he was established in New York, he just kept moving within the franchise. In 2005, he appeared on the short-lived spin-off Law & Order, Trial by Jury.
Yeah, and in that single appearance, where the prosecution team takes the man accused of shooting Detective Green to trial, Munch's role was significant enough to earn Richard Belzer a truly unique title.
What was that?
At that point, Belzer became the third actor in American television history to play the same character on 6 different primetime television shows. That included Homicide, Law & Order, SVU, and Trial by Jury. The foundation of the hypothesis is just the interconnectedness of this massive, ongoing crime universe.
But the theory doesn't become truly vast until Munch leaves the Dick Wolf comfort zone. His next appearances created what we can call the Baltimore network, connecting his BPD history to other heavy-hitting dramas.
And let's talk about the absolute gold standard for crime drama continuity, The Wire on HBO. Munch made a celebrated cameo in the season 5 episode Took. Now, this crossover is highly significant because The Wire was created by David Simon, who wrote the original book that inspired Homicide.
So it's realism feeding back into itself.
Precisely. The cameo itself was tiny, a true blink-and-you-miss-it moment, but its purpose and continuity was enormous. Munch is seen arguing at Kavanaugh's bar over his tab, and he explicitly references his own experience running a bar.
Confirming he still owns the waterfront from his Homicide days.
Yes. This confirmed, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that the realistic, grounded universe of The Wire and the gritty world of Homicide share the same Baltimore reality.
And there's another layer of metafiction there too, right?
Oh, get this. In that same bar scene, we see Major Dennis Mello, a character played by the real Jay Lansman, the actual retired homicide detective who partially inspired the character of John Munch.
Wow.
So you have a fictional character based on a real person interacting with the real person who inspired him, all inside a fictional reality that is itself imagined by a child.
That is exactly the level of self-referential absurdity that fuels the Westphall Hypothesis. It's realism just collapsing into metafiction. And then we jump completely off the map into deep science fiction and conspiracy with the X-Files on Fox.
Yep. Munch appeared in the season 5 episode Unusual Suspects, which was a flashback episode set in 1989.
And this crossover is just conceptually perfect.
Yeah.
The X-Files is all about deep state secrets, government cover-ups, massive conspiracies.
Munch's absolute favorite topic. The episode was an origin story for the Lone Gunmen, the famous trio of paranoid theorists who helped Mulder and Scully. And Munch, working for the Baltimore PD at the time, interrogates them after a warehouse raid.
And here's the cosmic irony the critique noted. The ultimate conspiracy theorist detective actually dismisses the Lone Gunmen's plot, right? He doesn't believe them.
He doesn't. They try to explain it to him. Hallucinogenic gas, a deep government operation, and he just dismisses it. He's so focused on his own specific conspiracies that he can't see the bigger one right in front of him.
But the connection is made. Homicide, the entire Law & Order franchise, The Wire, and the X-Files all are now one unified, Baltimore-centric fictional reality. A single narrative structure dreamed up in a child's room.
But the web extended even further, connecting the serious procedurals to the absurd worlds of network comedy and short-lived dramas. And these are arguably the most challenging leaps for the hypothesis to justify.
Yeah, how does the theory justify that massive genre leap? I mean, are we really saying that Munch's appearance is enough to pull the Bluths, the ultimate dysfunctional sitcom family from Arrested Development, into the same imaginary reality as a grim Baltimore murder case?
According to the hypothesis, yes, absolutely. On Fox, Munch appeared as Prof. Munch in Arrested Development in the episode Exit Strategy. The context is played completely for laughs. He's pretending to be a professor teaching a scrapbooking class, but it's actually a trap set by the Bluths to trick Tobias Funke.
Right, but the character maintains his name and general role, a slightly shady intellectual figure, and that's enough.
That's enough. His physical presence, confirming that John Munch exists in the Arrested Development reality, pulls the entire Bluth universe into the Westphall snow globe. It suggests that Michael Bluth's fight for family sanity is just a sidebar in Tommy Westphall's mind.
And then there's the self-referential world of 30 Rock on NBC, another show known for its meta-humor.
Yeah. In the episode Que Sorpresa, Munch and Finn Tutuola appear in a specific clip from SVU that was written and shot specifically for 30 Rock.
That's a fascinating layer of reality bending. They created fiction within fiction within fiction.
Yeah, and the clip is hilarious. Jack Donaghy is pitching a voice-activated TV, and the TV turns on to Munch and Finn's dialogue, which then interferes with the voice commands and causes chaos. Later, Richard Belzer returned for the series finale, where he played the actor Richard Belzer.
Which blurs the line, but the initial explicit appearance pulls 30 Rock firmly into the fictional universe.
We also need to count the shorter, less remembered appearances that solidify his role. He appeared in the short-lived drama The Beat on UPN in 2000.
Yeah.
Munch, having recently transferred to the NYPD, makes a cameo in the second episode, running into the main characters at a crime scene. Many of the producers came from Homicide, so it was an inevitable continuity nod, but it's one more node in the vast network.
That's 7 core live-action series right there. I mean, Homicide, Law & Order, SVU, Trial by Jury, The Wire, The X-Files, Arrested Development, and The Beat. That's already incredible. What are the final 3 live-action appearances that seal the deal?
Well, the remaining 3 come from slightly more obscure or unexpected sources, often brief cameos. Munch had appearances on Luther.
The BBC show?
Yeah, the BBC show, but in a crossover context that linked to the U.S. universe. Also Sideshow, another short-lived crime drama with Dick Wolf links, and crucially, Jimmy Kimmel Live, where Belzer did an impromptu scene as Munch. Now, some purists exclude the late-night talk show appearance.
But it uses the character in a fictionalized context, so it often counts.
It often counts towards the 10 different series achievement.
And we cannot, in good conscience, ignore the absolute absurdity of his further reach.
Hey!
Even if the purists exempt cartoons and talk shows, Munch's legacy extends even to those.
Oh, we're talking about the puppet crossover.
Huh.
A Muppet version of Munch appeared in the Sesame Street sketch Law & Order, Special Letters Unit.
Unbelievable.
Furthermore, Richard Belzer appeared as himself in the special Elmo-Palooza, where Big Bird mistakes him for a police officer, directly referencing his famous role. And yes, he appeared in the animated sitcom American Dad, where he recruits Steve as a detective.
The man truly went everywhere. The power of John Munch is that he took the localized, contained dream of a single Boston hospital and just exploded it outwards. He is a central node proving the entire televisual landscape is a fabrication resting on the bookshelf of a single child.
So now that we understand the central mechanism, the 10 appearances of Detective Munch, let's step back and fully consider the breathtaking, just incredible scale of the theory he enables.
This is where it gets really interesting, because the numbers are astounding. Because of the direct and indirect crossovers originating from St. Elsewhere, and heavily accelerated by the network-hopping John Munch, the hypothesis pulls a massive number of shows into the unified universe.
As of the last serious counts maintained by fan communities, over 441 distinct television shows can be tied directly or indirectly to this single premise.
441. 441 shows. That means, hypothetically, a huge chunk of episodic television spanning multiple eras and decades from, I Love Lucy in the 1950s, all the way up to recent programs like The Flash exists solely in the subconscious mind of Tommy Westphall.
The theory gains its terrifying power not just from Munch, but through the resulting chain reactions. Once Munch links Homicide to the X-Files, for example, those shows have their own established continuity webs, which then touch other shows, and it creates an exponential spread.
Right.
The connections quickly become multi-dimensional, crossing networks and even crossing the ocean.
Okay, give us the chain reaction that breaks the most brains. We need to trace the longest, most mind-blowing connection from that medical drama all the way to deep space science fiction. How do we get from St. Eligius to the TARDIS?
This is a perfect example of how the logical premise pushes the bounds of reality until they just snap. We start with the direct St. Elsewhere link to the Boston bar, Cheers. Donald Westphall and 2 other doctors from St. Eligius visited Sam Malone's bar, establishing they exist in the same Boston.
Okay, standard common crossover.
Correct. Cheers then spawned the highly successful spin-off character, Frasier Crane, leading to the show Frasier. Still standard. Now, the next jump is a bit more tenuous, but it's still based on character interaction. John Hemingway, a character from the John Larroquette Show, once called into Frasier Crane's Seattle talk show.
Okay, bar to psychiatric call-in show.
Yeah.
Logical, if a little stretched.
Here is where we leave human reality. The John Larroquette Show once mentioned a company named Yoyodyne, a fictional manufacturing client. Yoyodyne, in turn, is a client of the demonic law firm Wolfram and Hart.
Wait, Wolfram and Hart from Angel?
The very same. The central, pervasive evil entity in the supernatural series Angel, which itself is a spin-off of Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
So a conversation on a call-in radio show leads directly to interdimensional law firms run by demons. The logic is brutal. That pulls 2 massive supernatural universes into Tommy's brain.
But we keep going past the demons and the vampires. Wolfram and Hart also had a client named Wayland Yutani. Now, if that name sounds familiar, it should. Weyland-Yutani is the notoriously evil, deep space mega corporation from the Alien film franchise.
So the dreams of Tommy Westphall include corporate entities that specialize in weaponizing xenomorphs. This is an elaborate dream.
Exactly. But the chain doesn't stop with the films. A Weyland-Yutani weapons display screen was also seen in the sci-fi western series Firefly.
So the genius of Joss Whedon's Space Cowboy show is now confirmed to be imaginary. Where is the final link to break our minds?
The final step takes us across the Atlantic and outside the conventional U.S. network structure. A Weyland-Yutani ship is seen or mentioned or referenced in the BBC science fiction comedy series Red Dwarf. And finally, Red Dwarf also happens to feature the iconic police box, the Doctor's TARDIS.
Wow. So because 3 doctors went out for a beer in Boston, every alien, every spaceship, every dark corporate entity, and every sonic screwdriver is imaginary. The entire history of the Time Lords is contained in Tommy's snow globe. That is the genius and the absurdity of applying this logic so comprehensively.
And the hypothesis isn't always reliant on direct character crossovers. It uses shared fictional details to provide the connective tissue. And this is often where the producers are to blame for having too much fun with continuity, intentionally creating an Easter egg universe.
What are some of those pervasive fictional details that act like continuity glue?
Well, we see the consistent use of fictional brands. The most famous example is Morley cigarettes. They're ubiquitous. They appear in dozens of shows, including The X-Files, which Munch linked to, Seinfeld, Friends, many others. If a character is smoking a Morley, they are in Tommy's universe.
That's amazing. It suggests a single unified intellectual property landscape operating within the dream.
And fictional locations are also vital. Hudson University is a prominent institution of higher learning mentioned in major, otherwise unrelated shows like The Cosby Show, Law and Order.
Munch's universe.
Right, and Murder, she wrote. So if a character graduated from Hudson University on The Cosby Show, that show, too, is now part of Tommy's fictional dream world, thanks to Law and Order's direct link to Munch.
And we noted earlier that producers intentionally play this game. Tom Fontana, the producer of St. Elsewhere and creator of Homicide, provided one of the strongest internal corporate links.
Yes. Fontana established that the fictional corporation that bought St. Eligius Hospital in St. Elsewhere's final season, the one that forced the hospital closure, was the exact same corporation that owned the prison hospital in his subsequent series, Oz.
Wow.
That's a deep, intentional nod to continuity that ties another groundbreaking HBO series into the same fictional network.
So we have the evidence, the anchor, and the scale. It sounds airtight if you accept the initial premise, but we have to give sufficient time to the critical thinking objections because they're pretty significant. This theory ignores a lot of common sense production practices.
That is absolutely essential to critical thinking. The hypothesis, while it's powerful as a narrative tool, is built on shaky philosophical ground if you consider the reality of television production.
Okay, let's start with intent.
The ultimate objection often comes down to authorial intent. We have to remember that the theory was actually put forward by comic book writer Dwayne McDuffie as a reductio ad absurdum argument.
For our listeners, what exactly does reductio ad absurdum mean in this context?
It means reducing an argument to absurdity. McDuffie's goal was to push the logic of fictional continuity until it broke, to show how silly and unwieldy it is to rely so heavily on brief cameos or shared fictional brands to establish continuity. He never intended for this to become a literal philosophical statement about the universe.
He was using the extreme conclusion to disprove the premise.
Exactly, but the fans, of course, took that extreme conclusion and ran with it, treating the result as the premise itself.
So what is the biggest objection from the perspective of the creators of these shows?
The biggest issue is that the creators of shows like Cheers or Frasier had no intention or knowledge that their entire world, their characters, their drama, would be defined as imaginary by the non-consensual ending of an unrelated medical drama from 2 decades earlier. Critics argue that linking shows by shared brands or locations is simply common TV shorthand used by prop masters and writers who like internal jokes. It's not an actual cosmic statement about a unified reality.
It's production laziness or homage, not metaphysical truth.
Precisely. And then there's the notorious real people problem.
This one throws a wrench into everything because TV isn't fully self-contained.
It absolutely does. If Cheers is imaginary, what about the real living people who appeared on it, like the game show host Alex Trebek? If Trebek is a figment of Tommy's imagination, does that mean Tommy also imagined Jeopardy? And if Tommy imagined Jeopardy, does that imply Tom imagined the entire genre of game shows and the real-life career of a celebrity?
That's a huge problem. It forces the scope to expand past fictional narrative and into documented reality.
It spirals into pure absurdity. This is why purists, like the theory's co-creators Keith Gow and Ash Crow, are forced to create exceptions. They have to exempt real people playing themselves, as well as cartoons and feature films, to maintain any semblance of logical structure.
But that creates a secondary problem. Why is Munch's appearance on 30 Rock fictional, but his actor playing himself later in the same show is real? The lines become incredibly blurred and arbitrary.
And it's funny because Munch himself appeared in cartoons and talk shows, muddying the water even for the purists who try to impose rules.
Right.
And the final, most fundamental objection challenges the origin itself. Maybe the snow globe scene was itself a dream or an unreliable narrative device negating the entire concept. Brian Weatherson, then a professor of philosophy at Cornell, wrote an influential piece outlining logical and philosophical challenges, arguing that the snow globe is just one interpretation and not necessarily the correct one. The theory depends on accepting the most extreme interpretation of a highly ambiguous final scene.
So we have author intent, logistical flaws, and philosophical challenges. Yet, despite all these objections, the theory endures. It thrives. Why? What's the enduring power of the Tommy Westphall universe?
Because, as one of the hypothesis's co-creators, Keith Gow, says, the theory doesn't really depend on Tommy Westphall, but he's a good hook. The connections still exist, whether they are viewed as a dream within fiction or simply an interconnected televisual universe.
It provides a framework. It's an intellectual game for the audience, a way of asserting that the continuity we see, the shared brands, the returning faces, is valid, even if the authors didn't intend a massive, unified reality resting on a child's bookshelf. It honors the viewer's obsessive attention to detail.
And it speaks to the shared cultural tapestry of television. The fact that the ultimate cynical investigator, John Munch, the man who spent his life exposing conspiracies and fighting the establishment, is the one who proves the entire world is a massive, unified lie dreamed up by a child, is just the perfect, sublime, cosmic irony.
It forces us to think about what we consume. If Munch is the most durable, recognizable character across 3 decades of television, and his entire reality is suspect, then how seriously should we take the other fictional worlds we allow to occupy our minds?
It turns the entire television medium into a piece of structured, highly detailed fantasy, regardless of whether the shows are comedies, police procedurals, or science fiction. Munch is the ghost who walks, proving the dream is real, even if he doesn't know it.
Before we wrap up and look at the final provocative thought, we have to note that Munch's story did come to a formal conclusion relatively recently, which provides a nice sense of closure to the anchor of this universe.
It did. After his formal retirement from the NYPD's Special Victims Unit, Munch continued to weave continuity by serving as a special investigator for the New York County District Attorney's Office. He was still maintaining his connections to the institutional system, despite his lifelong distrust of it.
And then he completed the perfect fictional circle. He moved back to Baltimore, the city that started his career, to resume ownership of the waterfront bar, cementing his legacy in both cities, the place where he began and the place where he became famous.
That return to Baltimore was vital for continuity. It brought him back to his true fictional home and tied off those early Homicide threads. And his final emotional closure came in the season 25 premiere of Law & Order, SVU, when his death was announced. And his SVU colleagues, including Fin Tutuola and Olivia Benson, raised a heartfelt toast in his memory. It gave a powerful sense of finality to a character who had spanned 3 decades and hundreds of fictional worlds.
So we have the duality. The child Tommy Westphall created the reality by looking at a snow globe, and the cynical detective John Munch proved its vast, absurd interconnectedness by simply showing up everywhere.
Yeah.
He's a detective who truly saw through the veil of reality, ironically proving that the veil was just a construct of a child's formidable mind.
It's a remarkable legacy. He appeared on 10 series, making links to 441 others, connecting everything from The Wire's realism to Angel's demons.
And that leads us to the final provocative thought to mull over. Think about John Munch's core identity. He spent his life fighting institutions, exposing conspiracies, and distrusting authority, dedicating himself to finding the real truth beneath the veneer. Yet the Tommy Westphall hypothesis suggests that his entire existence, his cynicism, his investigative talent, his life's work, was nothing more than a highly structured, self-contained reality built by a young, autistic boy.
So if John Munch, the perpetual skeptic, represents the establishment he once protested, and he exists only in Tommy Westphall's mind, then what larger commentary does this imply about the reality we consume every day? Are our own complex narratives, the political dramas, the high-stakes meetings, the crime sagas we follow religiously, just sophisticated stories being played out in someone else's imaginative space?
Is your reality more stable than Detective Munch's? You might want to, check your snow globe before you decide.